He was dismissed from the band he helped establish, arrested for pointing a gun at his wife, and screamed in a drunken fury behind the scenes. However, the following morning, he stepped onto the stage and performed a piece that was so beautiful. The room was left in a state of silence. Dickey Betts, the untamable artist of the American South, was the man who penned Ramblin Man, the only Allman Brothers band hit to enter the Billboard Top 10. He was also the composer of Jessica, a wordless symphony that compelled the world to acknowledge Southern rock as a genre with genuine emotional depth. Additionally, Betts was the man who burned every bridge. Alliances, marriages, and reputations in order to live and perform music in accordance with his convictions. Betts was the living soul of the Allman Brothers band, rebellious, wounded, and impossible to control, if Duane Allman was the fallen angel. He played the guitar as if he were recounting his own life story. No words were required, only a single melody was required, and the loneliness, longing, and torment were evident in each note. This is the narrative of Dickey Betts, a rebel who never yielded, a prodigy who lacked restraint, and an artist whose music continues to resonate even after his quiet departure in 2024. Additionally, are you certain that you can comprehend a legend solely by listening to a song? Childhood. Dickey Betts was born in West Palm Beach, Florida, on December 12, 1943. However, that was not the place from which he was molded. He was raised in Bradenton, a small agricultural town located on the southwestern coast of Florida, where orange groves extended indefinitely, dirt roadways emitted red dust, and time appeared to move at a slower pace. The music of the American South was always present, despite the fact that his family was not affluent or prestigious. His father, a quiet, hard-drinking man who worked various jobs, played the mandolin and banjo at local gatherings. His mother frequently listened to swing music while cooking and would switch on the radio. Betts was raised in a household where the Carter family, Hank Williams, and Bill Monroe were constant companions, and music was not merely a distant dream, but a tangible presence on the front veranda. Betts began playing the ukulele at the age of 6, and he subsequently progressed to the fiddle, mandolin, and banjo. However, it was not until he held his first electric instrument, which he had borrowed from a neighbor, that he realized that this was his destiny. Every afternoon, little Dickey would take the guitar to the veranda and play the same melodies he heard on the radio continuously. He was not instructed in the art of reading music. He acquired knowledge through both auditory and tactile means. He exhibited the spirit of an artist from a young age, not the dreamy, delicate style, but the street-smart style that adheres to music as a means of survival. It was evident from an early age that his nature was rebellious, obstinate, and untamable. Rules were unbearable to Betts. He once resigned from a church music class due to the fact that he was compelled to adhere to the book. "I do not perform music to be informed that I am in harmony." In a rare interview regarding his boyhood, he once stated, "I play to feel alive." Betts's childhood was not tranquil, despite the absence of significant family catastrophes. He was raised in a society that emphasized the importance of resilience, toughness, and invulnerability in males. If any emotions were present, they were to be emptied into a glass or a fist. However, Betts elected to pursue an alternative course of action. He channeled his emotions into the instrument. That was the sole location in which he was permitted to dream, remember, suffer, and be soft without feeling ashamed. At the age of 16, he withdrew from school, not because he had failed, but because the curriculum was inadequate for his needs. He began performing in local bands, including the Jokers, the Soul Children, and the Second Coming, and traveled to bars, clubs, and county fairs throughout the Tampa Bay region. "I once performed at a bar where customers brought firearms, but no one was shot while I was playing Sweet Home Alabama," he once stated. "They merely observed. That was the moment I realized that I could endure with music." The seeds of a musical revolution, a genre that had not yet been named, were carried by a long-haired boy from Bradenton who donned high boots and leather jackets. At the time, no one could have predicted this. A guitar-playing technique that had never been defined. However, Betts did not require a label. He required only an instrument, a stage, and a slight gust of southern air to caress his collar after each song concluded. Although Southern rock had not yet been founded, its soul was already developing. Dickey Betts' spirit had already begun to sing in the first riffs he played on a borrowed guitar, in the early drunken nights, and during the scorching Florida summers. Early career. Dickey Betts was a hired gun who played guitar in bar bands, local touring acts, and dive joints before his name was featured on the cover of Southern rock legends. His music frequently had to contend with the sound of beer bottles popping and drunken laughter. However, it was in these dusty, rough-edged venues that he refined his instincts. These were sites without studios or sound engineers, where music was either alive or dead in the moment. Betts began experimenting with prolonged improvisation and dual harmonies while playing with groups such as the Jokers and the Second Coming in the 1960s. The Second Coming was a psychedelic rock band based in Florida. Betts rapidly established himself as an unparalleled guitarist within the Southern underground scene, despite the fact that none of the band members were renowned. He was able to transform a solo into a narrative, and he played rock that was infused with jazz and blues with a touch of country. During this period, Betts encountered Barry Oakley, a teenage bassist who was renowned for his powerful groove, and his life was forever altered. Not only did Oakley become a close companion, but he also served as the intermediary between Betts and two brothers who were in pursuit of a greater purpose, Duane and Greg Allman. Duane Allman returned to the South in 1969 after an unsuccessful run with the band Hourglass in California. Resolute in their pursuit of a novel musical entity that transcended conventional blues but did not quite conform to the realm of rock. Duane was certain that he had identified the ideal partner after only one jam session. Betts and Allman were not identical, but they complemented one another. The one was introspective and pensive, while the other was bold and sharp. They did not engage in the game with the intention of surpassing one another. The two players interacted in a manner reminiscent of two halves of a single entity, moving in tandem and blending without any conflict. The new band was officially established in March 1969 in Jacksonville, Florida, with Greg Allman on vocals and keys, Barry Oakley on bass, and Butch Trucks, Jai Johani, and Jima Johansson on drums. They adopted the appellation Allman Brothers Band after Duane had initiated the concept. However, Dickey Betts was an indispensable member from the outset. Betts perceived this as more than merely an ensemble, it was a second family. A location in which he was not obligated to suppress his impulses, where he could perform 10-minute solos without interruption. He and Duane were the first to introduce guitar harmonies on stage, a sound that would become the unmistakable signature of Southern rock. The melodic lines intertwined like two rivers. The Allman Brothers Band's debut album, 1969, was not a commercial success, however, critics praised it. Betts composed the track in memory of Elizabeth Reed with a jazz-influenced structure, and it soon became one of the band's live masterpieces. It was Betts's initial declaration. He was not merely a guitarist, he was a storyteller in sound. In a rock world that was divided between California's psychedelia and the British invasion, the Allman Brothers Band, supported by Betts's quiet architecture, forged a third path, bringing the grit, melancholy, and pride of the American South to the stage. From the 20-minute jams at Fillmore East to the poetic melodies in songs such as Revival and Dreams, Dickey Betts played a significant role in the initiation of a new era in American rock music. Betts was no longer a hired hand, despite the fact that his career was just beginning. He was now a part of a legend in the making. Success in one's professional life. The Allman Brothers Band was left in a state of distress following the death of Duane Allman in a motorcycle accident in 1971. The ensemble had lost its leader. A musical fraternity had been irreparably divided. Dickey Betts was the focus of attention, despite the fact that no one expressed it explicitly. No one was genuinely prepared. However, Betts was aware that the ensemble would disband unless he took the initiative. However, he did not make loud declarations, rather, he used a guitar that spoke loudly than ever. Betts did not merely assume the role of main guitarist in Duane's absence. He began to compose more, perform for extended periods, and sing more, contributing to the band's transition from a state of grief to a commercial apex. Brothers and Sisters was published in 1973, and Betts served as its creative force. He composed Jessica, a 7-minute instrumental that is replete with emotion, despite the absence of vocals and lyrics. It was not merely a song. It was a guitar conversation in which he conveyed his longing for Duane, his delight in becoming a father, and his conviction in a type of music that could endure loss. However, the moment that truly established Dickey Betts as a legend was the release of Ramblin Man, a song that he composed, sang, and transformed into the band's sole top 10 success on the Billboard Hot 100. It was not only the most commercially successful Southern rock song ever published, but it also served as a brilliant pivot, incorporating country rock sensibilities that were both accessible and complex enough to maintain artistic integrity. The Allman Brothers band dominated the most significant stages in America from 1973 to 1976. Dickey Betts was not merely a guitarist, he was also the primary songwriter, the primary vocalist, and, at times, the glue that kept the band together while Gregg Allman was consumed by narcotics and legal issues. Simultaneously, Betts began to experience the sensation that the band was becoming a prison, constraining his creativity under the perpetually present specter of the Allman name. So, in 1974, he published his inaugural solo album, Highway Call. It was an unexpected development. There will be no extended jam band solos or Southern electric blues, rather, a modest, rootsy amalgamation of folk country jazz, replete with steel guitar and fiddling. Betts' gentle, wandering demeanor was revealed to the public for the first time, as she sat on a wooden veranda, playing an acoustic guitar with a quiet smile. Betts did not conclude his investigation at that point. Dickey Betts and Great Southern was his own ensemble, which he established in 1977. He demonstrated that he was not interested in being a carbon copy of himself through albums such as Great Southern, 1977, and Atlanta's Burning Down, 1978. He deviated from the Allman sound and even from fan expectations to perform what he referred to as Americana prior to the term's existence. Betts relentlessly toured, mentored young guitarists, and transmitted his unique style of twin harmony and rare live improvisation during this period. He became a genuine bandleader not through media hype or scandal, but rather through the use of an instrument and a devoted group of musicians. Betts maintained his leadership position with Great Southern, despite the fact that he remained a primary songwriter during the Allman Brothers reunion in the 1980s and 1990s. He guided the group through the retro rock era in the late 1990s, ensuring that Southern rock was present in every performance and every 20-minute live jam. In 2000, he reformed Great Southern and released a number of live albums, including Instant Live and Lave at the Odeon. Praised by critics despite failing to achieve widespread popularity. Betts always played what he had to play, without pandering to the crowd, without chasing trends, or playing what the crowd desired. After several years of retirement, he announced his return to the stage in 2018. This time, he would be accompanied by his son, Dwayne Betts, for a tour that was widely considered a ceremonial passing of the baton. Dwayne emulated his father's guitar playing style, but with a more composed demeanor. Their performance at the Peach Festival of that year was considered to be the final instance in which audiences would witness the Southern acoustic soul blaze on stage. However, it has since been reignited by two generations. Dickey Betts experienced a cerebral hemorrhage shortly thereafter. His recuperation was sluggish, and he ultimately discontinued his performing career. However, his primary concern was music, which he never abandoned. Betts demonstrated a single truth throughout 5 decades, from sold-out Fillmore concerts to center stage with the Allman Brothers, and from solitary journeys with Great Southern to bar bands. Music does not necessitate authorization. Honesty is the sole requirement. Dickey Betts lived and played as if it were the sole thing left to believe in. Tragedy and scandals. Some artists fade due to a dearth of talent. Others, due to their dearth of opportunity. However, Dickey Betts' tragedy was the result of his excessive talent, which was ensnared in an ego that no one, not even he, could subdue. Betts had begun to decline by the 1990s, consumed by alcohol and the sensation of being ensnared by the legacy he had helped establish. During the celebration, he refrained from consuming alcohol. He consumed alcohol to alleviate an internal ailment that was previously alleviated by Dwayne Allman's twin instrument. However, following Dwayne's passing, no other means of alleviation were feasible. Betts, a free spirit, was crushed beneath the weight of schedules, performances, expectations, and the pressure to live up to a brand that had long confined him. The band had evolved into a massive juggernaut. He became enraged, consumed alcohol, and occasionally vanished without uttering a word. He was detained in 1996 at a strip club for refusing to leave after causing a disturbance. His image was featured on the front page, with the headline "Dickey Betts, From Fillmore to Jail, Back in Trouble Again." A division among fans ensued. Some individuals asserted that he required assistance. Others were forthright. The Allman legacy is being destroyed by Betts. But this is nothing in comparison to the catastrophe of 2000. After weeks of erratic behavior during rehearsals, backstage tension, and unexplained absences, Dickey Betts received the one thing that no musician ever desires: a fax. Oh, that was the method by which the Allman Brothers band terminated him. No phone contact, no meeting. He received no eye contact from anyone. A single piece of paper was delivered to his residence, notifying him that the band would proceed with the summer tour without him. By fax, the individual who penned Ramblin Man, the band's most successful song, the individual who sustained the Allman Brothers following Dwayne's death, the individual who once addressed Greg Allman as "my brother" on stage, and the individual who has since been expelled from the band he helped establish. He refrained from remaining silent. Betts filed a lawsuit. The media was inundated. Lines were drawn by fans. Some individuals supported Greg, while others supported Dickey. Some referred to it as one of the most significant betrayals in American rock. Others considered it a suitable conclusion for a man who was unable to regulate his emotions. Betts' response was straightforward: "I was not the issue. I was the reason they continued to exist." The Allman Brothers resumed their touring activities shortly thereafter. However, they were devoid of Blue Sky, Jessica, and the band's unpredictable, chaotic edge. The music was more refined and tighter, but it lacked a quality that only Betts could provide: the impression that it was being played by an individual who had survived. Betts toured with his own ensemble in the years that followed. However, the former fervor never quite resurfaced. The press ceased to write about him, and audiences shrank. Those who had previously stood beside him now stood on the opposite side of silence. The Grammy-winning instrumental, Jessica, was still being played by him. However, it was no longer a joyous anthem. It was a monologue from an individual who had been neglected by the world, an echo. Betts did not succumb to an overdose. He did not experience a state of insanity. He did not commit suicide. However, he became a shadow of himself in an industry where artists are cherished for their timely nature and discarded for the same reason, despite the fact that he was still alive, performing, and singing. Dickey Betts' tragedy was not the result of a singular accident, gunshot, or fall. His tragedy was a slow, relentless, and profoundly agonizing realization that the world he had helped construct had evolved and no longer accommodated him. He silently, bitterly, and discreetly carried his guitar forward, coexisting with it. No pleading, no apologies, and no looking back. Private existence. However, as time progressed and Betts became increasingly enmeshed in alcohol and drugs, their shared existence took on a more battlefield-like quality. The most startling incident occurred in 1996 when Donna summoned the police to their residence. She asserted in the report that Betts had pointed a revolver at her head in a fit of fury after consuming heroin and cocaine. Donna declined to testify, which resulted in the case never being prosecuted. However, the incident had a lasting impact on his personal life. The family's history of violence was resurfaced when Donna herself was arrested in 2017 for aiming a gun at a group of school children playing sports near their residence. Nevertheless, Betts never abandoned her. Even though there were no more conflicts to win, they remained together until the end in a peculiar manner, resembling two survivors in the same trench. Despite the relentless turmoil and failed marriages, Betts' unwavering affection for his children, particularly his son Dwayne Betts, was unwavering. Dwayne was named in honor of his musical brother, Dwayne Allman, whom Betts once addressed as a soulmate. Dickey Betts was an artist that was impossible to manage in the realm of music. And in love, he was the type of character that no one could maintain for an extended period. Betts was married 5 times. The cycle of each woman who entered his life was consistent. She was initially attracted to the fire of his passion and talent, captivated by the tender spontaneity that manifested when he held a guitar, and ultimately worn down by his impulsiveness, sudden anger, and the long, cold silences that followed his drinking binges. Betts's early spouses were seldom public figures. However, those who were in close proximity to him reported that when he loved, he did so with brutal honesty, committing not only his heart but also his recklessness to the other person, withholding nothing. And it is possible that this is the reason why each of his early marriages resulted in divorce, weeping, and courtrooms filled with bitter words. The fourth marriage of the individual in question represented a significant turning point. Donna Betts was his wife. A woman who was not readily intimidated and possessed a strong will. Donna was more than just his wife, she was his traveling companion during the late 1980s and 1990s. She was his tour manager at one point and even engaged in a physical altercation with him on stage, insisting that he set down the bottle prior to a performance. During the initial years, they were akin to two warriors, one was an ardent artist, while the other was an uncompromising woman. Dwayne Betts was not merely a son, he was a successor. The youthful Dickey, who was still full of dreams and not yet crushed by reality, appeared to be channeled by Dwayne in the way he played, wrote, and carried himself on stage. Betts was not a father who was overtly affectionate or warm. He refrained from speaking the words "I love you" in public. However, Betts' expression of pride and quiet sentiment toward Dwayne during their 2018 performance of Ramblin Man and Blue Sky conveyed all that was necessary. In the aftermath of her stroke in 2022, Betts virtually disappeared from the public eye. Donna provided him with care, while Dwayne held the family's musical torch. Betts was no longer divided by the burden of fame, no longer fought, and no longer performed in his final months. He lived in solitude, encircled by his small family, and observed his son continue the journey he had initiated. Dickey Betts was not an ideal individual, he was unsuccessful in his relationships with women. He caused harm to those whom he held in high regard. He irreparably damaged relationships that appeared to be unbreakable. However, he never concealed any of it. In love, as in music, he was consistently forthright. He was a genuine, unforgettable human being, not just to his fans, as a result of his raw, thorny honesty, which, while it may not have brought him enduring happiness, was a testament to his character. However, to those who adored him, abandoned him, and ultimately remained. Dickey Betts' legacy and influence were established without the necessity of a formal tribute performance or repeated Billboard rankings. He has left an indelible mark on the annals of American rock, particularly Southern rock. He did not merely compose a success as the primary songwriter of Ramblin Man. He composed an anthem in support of the Southern states that were independent. A song that could be viewed as a reflection of oneself by any American with rural origins. The Grammy-winning instrumental that Jessica performs is not merely a guitar, it evokes an endless voyage, an open sky, and the soul of a wanderer who was at home only within the music. Betts was the first to combine a Gibson Les Paul guitar with traditional blues structures and five-string banjo articulation, resulting in a signature style of Southern rock that was influenced by jazz and country. It was not a duel when he and Dwayne Allman played dual guitar. It was the movement of two spirits in unison. Betts has been cited as a model of American guitar playing, defined by grit and grace, by later performers such as Warren Haynes, Derek Trucks, Charlie Starr of Blackberry Smoke, and even John Mayer. Additionally, he was one of the few artists to endure the internal turmoil of the Allman Brothers band. Preserving the Southern essence in every composition, from sudden fatalities to legal feuds. Stage effects, electronic gimmicks, or production tricks were not employed in any of his compositions. Betts conveyed narratives through his guitar, and his audience comprehended each syllable. His influence was not merely technical, it was a philosophy, a way of life, and a commitment to playing from the heart, without ever compromising in order to gain favor. Dickey Betts was a man who dared to reject the trend, to hold on to rawness, and to tolerate flaws, as long as they were genuine, in an era where the market dictates every product. His candor rendered him a symbol for independent musicians worldwide. Perhaps the most valuable legacy that Betts has left behind is not preserved on vinyl, but rather in the breath of the next generation. The name of a legend is not the only thing that his son, Dwayne Betts, carries. He performs music with the same passion, Southern pride, and lack of pretense as his father. Dickey Betts' influence has been extended into the 21st century by Dwayne and the Allman Betts Band, who now bear the brightest torch for Southern rock without diluting its identity. No autobiography, no grand statements. Dickey Betts' musical legacy is a testament to his talent. Complex yet liberating, emotional yet fierce, profoundly personal yet capable of affecting millions. That legacy continues to thrive, develop, and flourish with each note of blue sky that still resonates, regardless of his presence. The final years. Dickey Betts was unable to return to the stage after undergoing emergency brain surgery in 2018 due to a hemorrhage. He resided in a tranquil bayfront residence in Osprey, Florida, where the sound of waves supplanted applause and the guitar by his bedside served as his final companion. He no longer toured and stood under stage lights, however, he maintained his custom of sitting silently on the veranda for hours, gazing out over the water, where he used to fish in his youth. Neighbors recollect witnessing him hum old melodies, mumble melodies that were never released, and occasionally sit for hours without speaking, as if he were engaged in a conversation with a long-dead individual. Dickey Betts passed away on April 18 after a protracted battle with chronic obstructive pulmonary disease and cognitive decline. He passed away in the exact location where he had chosen to spend the remainder of his life, surrounded by the enduring echoes of music, his wife, children, and grandchildren. He was 80 years of age. There was no elaborate memorial, and there was no outpouring of celebrity tweets. However, it was the day that America lost the last honest voice of the Southern guitar, according to those who genuinely loved music. His legacy was not fame. It was musical integrity, a quality that not all artists possess the fortitude to uphold. He never compromised, never pursued trends, never altered his style to gain popularity, and he never returned to apologize for the past. He lived, created, loved, rebelled, and lamented according to his own terms. Then, he withdrew in the manner of a fatigued nomad, without fanfare or solicitation for homage. Dickey Betts was never an easy person to adore. He was impulsive, complex, and easily misconstrued, whether in music or in life. However, for those who were patient enough to listen attentively, there was a subtle sincerity in each note he played and decision he made, even when they were ultimately revealed to be errors. He did not establish an empire. He did not establish a brand. He did not leave behind a significant manifesto. But he also left behind a unique sound, the Southern guitar. It was not boisterous or polished, but it was so resonant with emotion that it caused you to pause. Betts opted to live as a man out of time in a world where everything must be flawless, orchestrated, and viral in order to exist. He maintained the imperfections, the tangles, and the wounds in his melodies, as only the music could be truly authentic with them intact. And if you are listening to Blue Sky or Ramblin Man today, please pay closer heed. In the solo, you will detect the presence of a man who was not striving for immortality. He was merely adhering to the call of liberation. Have you ever listened to Dickey Betts' music during a significant occasion in your life? Music is not merely sound, it is memory and emotion. Please share your thoughts in the comments section. It is the ultimate remnant of the individuals who have passed away. I look forward to our next narrative, in which each artist has their own unique approach to life and ensuring that they are never forgotten.